Hi everybody, I'm Miss Shawna and welcome to week 5 of Body Meets Mind. Today we are going to be covering a couple of really important topics related to mental health and coping positively. Last week we talked a lot about feelings and we talked about how our feelings and our thoughts affect our behavior. And today we're going to continue on a little talk about an important feeling called shame, okay? So I'm going to explain to you what that is and why it's important to know about shame so it can help you later in life. And then I'm also going to be talking about healthy versus unhealthy ways of coping. So I have given you guys some tools to use to cope when you're overwhelmed and to cope with your mental health. But I also want to touch on what is unhealthy, because by knowing what is not healthy, hopefully that can help you make some healthy choices if you're tempted to do something that might not be so great for your mental health. Okay, so welcome to week 5 and I'm so glad you're here. I can't believe we only have one session left before we're done. We've come a long way and covered a lot of territory, so I thank you for your time and patience and your willingness to learn about yourself and about mental health. Very, very important for life, and I'm so excited to hear what you have to say in our follow-up conversation in week 7. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do today is to talk about shame. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that word before. Some of you may have, some of you might not have. And so I want to really be clear with you as to what that word means, because it's a really important feeling that can cause a lot of problems in your life if it gets out of hand, okay? So we are going to be talking about shame, which is something that's very close to my heart and very important to me in my practice with kids, because what I've found over the years is that the kids that I work with often feel bad about things going on in their life. And really simply put, that is what shame is, okay? It's when we look at our life, our feelings, our thoughts, our behaviors, things going on in our life at home or at school, and we conclude that because those things are happening, we have done something wrong, okay? We are bad, we are wrong, we are embarrassed, we might feel guilty, and our whole self, our whole sense of self tends to be consumed by those feelings when we assume that because something has happened, we feel bad or we have done something wrong. I'm going to give you an example because that definition might not be so clear. So an example of what the feeling of shame can look like is, let's say you fail a test at school and then all of a sudden believe, oh, I'm such a failure. I cannot believe it. I'm horrible. I'm so embarrassed. I feel so bad about myself. I'm a failure. I'm awful. And that is what shame is, feeling really, really bad about yourself and about your life, so much so that you just want to hide. You're so embarrassed. You don't want to talk to anybody about it. You want to hide, you want to deny it or pretend that that situation didn't happen. And a lot of times when bad things happen in our life, that's when shame can creep in. So if we've failed a test or if we've had a bad sports game, if we didn't get into a college or university that we were hoping to, if we have a parent who's sick at home, a lot of times kids will say they feel really bad and that it's their fault and that they've done something wrong. Okay, so they're feeling shame because of what their parents are going through when really it's not their fault. If your parents are going through a divorce, you might feel shame, thinking it's your fault and that you wish it wasn't true and you just want to hide and not really acknowledge that that's happening in your life. That is shame, okay? So shame is feeling that some things going on in your life make you feel that you are less than and you're not important and that your value isn't as high and that things are your fault and that everything is wrong and it's your fault, okay? So that's what shame is. The problem with shame is that I'm sure we all feel that way now and then, but if we feel that way a lot, what ends up happening is that those feelings of shame can translate into feelings of anxiety, depression, extreme guilt, and an extreme sense of focusing on ourself. Okay, what we know from people who have gone through difficult times, if they carry a lot of shame with that, they can end up experiencing personality and relationship problems as they get older because they become so self-focused and then they have a hard time having empathy or taking perspectives and understanding the feelings and needs of other people. So shame is a really, really important feeling that I want you guys to remember and to know about. And if you're finding that you're feeling really badly about your life because of perhaps your learning or your sports performance or your parents' situation or something going on at home or at school, I really encourage you to get some help for that and talk to a professional. Maybe start out by talking to your parents or a trusted adult and let them know, man, I really feel bad about myself and bad about my life because of this thing going on. And I think that that's shame. I want to talk about that with somebody. Very, very important to do, and I really encourage you guys to do that. So that's a little bit about shame. I know we talked about other feelings last week, but this is a special feeling that is really important to learn about, and I wanted to give it its own session today because shameful feelings can get out of hand very easily. They can take over how you feel about your life very easily, and they can lead to a lot of problems later in life. The other thing that I want you guys to remember about shame and why it's so harmful is that because when people's lives are totally overwhelmed by feelings of shame, what ends up happening is that some very unhealthy ways of coping creep in and affect your mental health and your day-to-day functioning. When people carry a lot of shame over things in their life, meaning that they feel that there's a lot of things wrong in their life because of them, what ends up happening is you feel badly about yourself. As I said, you might experience symptoms of depression and anxiety and guilt. The other thing that can happen is that you can be in total denial about your problems. You might blame other people. You might lie to hide your problems. You might avoid getting help because you're in such denial. And so again, shame can really cause a lot of different problems in your life as you get older if you continue to feel that things are bad in your life because you've done something wrong. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick little true or false about shame, and we'll see how you guys are doing. Okay, number 1, shame is a feeling, true or false? The answer is true. Shame is a feeling, and it's a very important feeling to learn about. Number 2, shame means that you look at your life and things that aren't going so well, you attribute to being your fault, or you feel that things are not going well because you've done something wrong. Is that true or false? The answer is true. Number 3, there is help available for people who have a lot of shame over things gone wrong in their life. That answer is true as well. So that's a little bit about shame. And now what we're going to do is switch our focus into coping. We're going to talk about healthy coping and unhealthy coping. And we're also going to talk about words of affirmation, which are positive statements that you can say to yourself about yourself to help build resilience, to help reduce anxiety, to help build a growth mindset, and to help you cope when life is hard or when you're in a hard situation. Okay guys, I'm going to start out by teaching you a little bit about what is unhealthy in terms of how we cope with our mental health or our stress or difficult times in our life. Okay, so we have 2 options. Basically, when we go through difficult times or if we're struggling in our mental health, we can react in a healthy way and make healthy choices, or we can actually cope in an unhealthy way. And I know you guys are a little bit younger, but I do really believe in being honest with my students about ways that are unhealthy, so you're aware of what is not good for you, so you can make sure you don't do those things when you're going through a difficult time. Some of those unhealthy things include perhaps eating too much or not eating enough. Okay, so like not eating at all because you feel a little anxious, or eating tons and tons and tons. That's not healthy for you. The other thing that is not healthy is when you take out your feelings or your difficulties on somebody else. And so that might involve yelling at someone, maybe swearing at someone, throwing something, getting really frustrated with the people around you or your family. That's not fair for them, and that's not coping in a healthy way, okay? So be aware to make sure you try hard not to do that as well. The next thing that is unhealthy that might be a possibility is that you might pretend that your problems don't exist and avoid talking about them. So if you're feeling anxious or depressed, you might hide that or stuff it and pretend that you're fine when really you're not. And so if people ask you, hey, are you okay? You might say, yeah, I'm good. But inside you might actually be feeling really sad or really anxious or worried or fearful or embarrassed. And so not being honest about your feelings is a real problem. And you want to make sure that you don't cope that way, because that's really unhealthy for your mental health. The other thing that you might be tempted to do as you get older is to experiment with different substances in order to cope with your mental health or with an upsetting or overwhelming situation. And by substance uses, what I mean is that you might be tempted to use cigarettes or experiment with vaping. or taking pills or wine or taking alcohol. And so what that really is doing is self-medicating. It's trying to treat your mental health or to treat your worries and your upset with a substance. And that is not healthy and actually can make matters worse and make your mental health worse. There's lots of research on how substance use can exaggerate symptoms of mental health. It can also create paranoia. It can create delusional thinking and really, really impact your mental health in a negative way. So try to avoid substances if you can. The other thing that you can do that's unhealthy is sleep too much. So kind of push everybody away, retreat to your room and sleep all day, all night, all weekend, and just sleep, sleep, sleep. That's not healthy. And on the opposite end of that, not sleeping at all is also unhealthy. Okay, so if you're drinking a lot of coffee to perhaps cope because you're not feeling so great and you're therefore not needing a lot of sleep and you're awake all night long and all day long, that's not good for your mental health. So if you're struggling, make sure you get a good night's sleep. Sleep is really, really important. The last thing that I want to talk to you about unhealthy coping is hurting yourself physically. Sometimes when we're experiencing mental health problems or we're very overwhelmed, we feel that physical pain inside our body. And so some students might try to hurt themselves to make that pain go away. And so that obviously is not great for your mental health, it is not great for your physical health, and it causes safety concerns. So if that's you and you're finding that you are wanting to hurt yourself because of how you're feeling, please, please, please reach out to a trusted adult. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a coach. You can also go to the Kids Help Phone. I put that website up earlier in a previous session. I'll put that up again here. Make sure you reach out, because remember, your feelings are temporary. And even though you might be in a bad situation, you might feel horrible about your mental health, things might be so bad you can't take it anymore, those feelings are temporary. And if you make a decision to hurt yourself, that has a lasting impact, right? The impact of that is not temporary. But remember, your feelings are temporary and that they often will change and that they often can get better with the right help. So those are a few things about how people cope in unhealthy ways, and I really want you to remember those, because I don't want to see you guys making unhealthy choices when you're struggling. And that leads us to our next topic, which is about how to cope in healthy ways. Okay, what we're going to do now is focus on healthy ways that we can cope when we're feeling down in the dumps, anxious, worried, fearful, or if we're going through a hard time or experiencing stress. As we've covered in previous sessions, you can work on deep breathing, you can distract yourself, you can tell yourself positive statements that are true about your life or about the situation, you can do visualization, you can do progressive muscle relaxation, which uses the muscles in your body, you can listen to music. There's lots of things that you can do to cope positively. As a reminder, you can also seek professional help. So you can talk with a counselor or talk with somebody at your school or talk with your parents who can perhaps get you some professional help, and that could help as well. Some other things that you could do to cope in a positive way include doing something active. So as we talked about earlier in, I think it was session 1 or 2, we talked about self-care. And for some people that means getting active, going for a walk, going for a run. Physical activity is really good for our mental health, and so staying active is really part of healthy coping when we're feeling overwhelmed and we're feeling that our mental health is causing us some concern. So get busy and get active. A couple of other things that you might find helpful include doing something creative or constructive. So maybe you're going to go and do some drawing or a painting or make something or build something. That's really good for distracting yourself and getting your mind on something else that's more positive. So that's a really positive way of coping as well. As I said, music is great. So if you play a musical instrument, go and play that for a little bit, or play the radio or your favorite CD. Music can be very uplifting and can really take your mind off of things as well. So that's really positive. The other thing that I am going to talk to you about in terms of coping positively with your mental health is using self-talk to help yourself feel more positively and turn those negative thoughts into positives. We talked a little bit about that last week, but this specific strategy is called 4-finger affirmations, okay? And what you're going to do is you are going to tell yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you're having a bad day, or if your mental health isn't the greatest, what I want you to do is tell yourself 4 simple things that are positive and true about yourself. And what that does is take your attention off of the problems at hand, and it replaces those negative thoughts that come with that situation with positive things. So some examples of four-finger affirmations might be, I am smart. I am a good student. I have a strong mind. I have a strong body. I am good enough. I've got what it takes. I can do this. I don't understand things now, but I will learn how to do it. All of those positive things that are true about yourself. Come up with 4 of them and try to repeat them to yourself over and over. So this is going to take practice for you guys because these aren't things that we normally do. But the more you practice these positive affirmations, the more they will become automatic. And when you're having a bad day, that will be your go-to thinking instead of the negative thoughts about you. I realize that the 4-finger affirmations sounds like a very simple strategy, but what's great about that strategy is that it's easy for all students to do. It's very easy to remember, and it's backed by research that proves that when we do those self-affirmations, those positive affirmations that replace the negative thoughts, it actually can help us with our self-confidence. It can build resilience, it can develop a growth mindset, and it can help us feel more positively about negative situations in our life. To learn more about 4-finger affirmations and positive thinking, be sure to check out the School Mental Health Ontario website. So guys, today's session was a little bit shorter than last week's. I know we covered a lot of territory last week, but for today, I want you to really remember what shame is. It's that important feeling that we have when we tend to blame ourselves for things going wrong in our life, and that makes us feel less than, and it makes us feel that we want to hide and that we're embarrassed. And if you're struggling with those feelings, I really encourage you to get help sooner than later. We also talked about coping in unhealthy ways, of which there are many, and I hope all of you guys avoid doing those things. And I reminded you about some positive ways of coping, and I also talked to you about a new strategy called 4-finger affirmations, which I really hope you use. So your task for this next week is to come up with 4 positive, true statements about yourself, 1 for each finger, and try to tell yourself those statements over and over each day. That's going to be really helpful. In previous sessions, we talked about deep breathing, visualization, self-care, muscle relaxation, and I encourage you to go back and practice some of those techniques as well if you're feeling a little anxious or overwhelmed or worried or down in the dumps. So that's it for today. I know it's a shorter session, as I mentioned, but all really good stuff to think about and to practice for next week. I hope you guys have a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I can't wait to see you next week for week 6, our final week before we do our check-in visit, which we're going to do live through a Zoom conversation. Take care, everybody, and I hope you guys have great mental health over the course of this next week. Bye for now.